welcome back to Nairas and Smiles.
It's so easy to see that you're in love with me. Carve your name next to mine on that big oak tree. That's how you want it to be. You bring me things from the store and put it at my front door. I've lost count of the times this have happened before. Not that I'm keeping score, 'cause I do the same for you, just like I'm supposed to do. I'm yours, you're mine.
Hey guys! Okay, so, I got an apartment. Finally moved out. I have my own little place. It's only 500 square feet, but that is all I need because that's pretty much how much space it takes to hold all my books. I ended up donating over half of my books. You guys, every single book on these 3 shelves behind here are read books. So these are all books that I have read and loved, and I cannot describe to you how good it feels. My personal collection now is entirely books that I love and that I have read multiple times for some of them or most of them. So yes, I did organize my books, which you guys kind of saw a little montage in the beginning. The biggest difference between these bookshelves and my previous ones is that the old ones were made out of wood. So as you guys know, I double stacked, triple stacked, completely stuffed those bookshelves to the point where when I took all the books off to pack them, they collapsed, you guys. These guys are, like I said, made out of glass, so they do have a weight limit, which is good for me because it means I am forced to make sure that they stay organized. This first shelf here is mainly middle grade books, books I read when I was younger. It's a lot of Percy Jackson, a lot of old series. You guys might get a little nostalgic. Mainly middle grade, and then it kind of slowly goes into young adult, teen, and then it goes into adult, and I have my collector's editions along the bottom as well as classics. Some of my favorite books in this shelf over here, and the very bottom shelf is kind of just miscellaneous books that I couldn't fit into one of the categories. I kind of followed the Con Marie method, for anyone who knows who Con Marie is and watched the Netflix series and read the book. So I held each of my books, each of my 1,000 books that I had, and I just asked myself, do I love this book? Did I enjoy this book? And if the answer was no, I donated. I do have one more shelf that is over here in the corner, and this one is my bookstore shelf. So everything on this shelf is all books that I have not read yet. It is new books, books that I'm currently reading. I actually only have 3 of those shelves that are TBR books, I guess you could say, and the very top shelf of that 4th shelf is actually like non-fiction books, some of my textbooks from some of my language classes. So I actually have very few unread books now, which is also awesome. I donated quite a few books that were on my TBR that had been on there for a while, and I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has stuck around for all these years, and it feels like a huge it is a big milestone for me to be in my own place and to have my own space to create now, and there's going to be lots of videos in the future. Yeah, we're not going to get emotional and cry, we're just going to talk about books now. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my bookshelf. Okay guys, so I'm going to start on the very top row. If you guys can see, I kind of organized it by row versus by shelf. So we're going to start all the way at the beginning. We're going to start with my childhood here. Okay, so these first few books are middle grade. So the first series I have here is A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I only have 3 of the books. There are, I think, like 10 or 15. I don't even know how many of these I've read. I just remember going to the library when I was like 8, 9 years old and devouring these. First book here, which is The Bad Beginning, The Reptile Room. And then I have the 3rd book, which is The Wide Window. These are my babies, okay? They do not make, or at least I don't think they make, these original cover editions anymore. I had to find all of these books at a thrift store, and unfortunately I was only able to find 3 hardbacks. I hope to have these forever in my collection, but yeah, this is my childhood, okay? Everyone was at Hogwarts and I was at Camp Half-Blood. But yeah, so the first book here is The Lightning Thief. Next is A Sea of Monsters. I have The Titan's Curse and this beautiful, gorgeous sticker that just covers the the front of the cover. And then I have probably my favorite book in the entire series because it talks about one of my favorite myths, which is like the myth of the Minotaur. And this is The Battle of the Labyrinth. And then the very last book is The Last Olympian. Okay, and then I have the Heroes of Olympus series, which is a continuation of Percy Jackson. It kind of spins off and goes into Roman mythology, but we do have characters from the first series. The Lost Hero, The Son of Neptune, The Mark of Athena. But my personal favorite book in the Heroes of Olympus series, The House of Hades. The emotions. Lastly is The Blood of Olympus. The next series I have here is also by Rick Riordan, and it is his Egyptian mythology series, The Red Pyramid, Throne of Fire. The last book here is The Serpent's Shadow, and I'm so bummed he only made it a trilogy because I wish he just kind of continued on with it like he did with Percy Jackson. Okay, and then I have the Harry Potter books here, which I feel like I don't need to elaborate too much on this one. I didn't read Harry Potter until I was 16, you guys. So yeah, that's why I say I was a Percy Jackson girl, because I was late to the game with Harry Potter. Now we're kind of going into my teen/YA section over here. Of course, the very first book I have here is The Hunger Games by Susan Collins, Catching Fire, Mockingjay. Then I have my favorite series of all times. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't read this book series. The book changed my life. I talk about it all the time, but yes. So the first book, I actually have the original cover edition, and this is my little wristband for when I got to meet Tehere at the North Texas Teen Book Festival. Oh my gosh, she was the sweetest person, and I felt like I met my hero the day I met her. Unravel Me, Ignite Me, which I have this, you will see this quote all over my apartment, as well as tattooed on my body. I can't even describe how much that quote means to me. Ignite my love, ignite. It's just been like a mantra. And then I have Defy Me. Lastly, I have Restore Me. I do have Imagine Me, which is the last book that just came out, you guys. I'm gonna do a reading vlog for it. I wanted to wait until I moved into my apartment to read the final book just because I felt like it was such like a full circle thing, because I started reading this book when I first moved here to the mainland from Hawaii, and I was like going through a really hard time, and like to start the book off kind of the same way Juliet starts and to end the same way Juliet ends. Hopefully she lives, but you know what I mean, right? So I've been just waiting to get in here to read the last book. So once I do finish the last book, it will go on the shelf of glory over here. Next, I have Unite Me, which is a bind-up of the two novellas Destroy Me and Fracture Me, and it also has little journal entries from Juliet's journal in the first book, which I highly, highly recommend you guys pick up. Then I have Find Me, which is the bind-up of Kenji's novellas, so it has Shadow Me and Reveal Me. I think that's all the novellas. Oh my god, okay, another series that changed my life, you guys. You could just, let me just show you. You could just tell, just by the sheer number of sticky notes, how many times I have read and reread and loved this book. Magus Devater, I also got to meet her, which, hold on, I have to show you guys this because just look, she signed my name. This is my prized possession right here, along with my signed copy of Shatter Me. Raven Cycle series also changed my life. I read it around the same time as I read Shatter Me, so they're both just, they're my whole heart, you know? The Dream Thieves, which is probably my favorite next to the last book and her newest book. Blue Lily Lily Blue, The Raven King. Then I have her newest book, which is a spin-off of the Raven Cycle series. You don't have to read the Raven Cycle to read this, but I would highly, highly, highly recommend you read the Raven Cycle first, otherwise it just won't hit you the same way, you know what I mean? So, okay, next I have the Scorpio Races, which, oh my gosh, I think this was the second Magus Devater book I read after I read the first two books in the Raven Cycle series. This is amazing. It's a standalone book, but it's just as magical as all of her other books. Then I have this little book here. Magus Devater, she created her own tarot deck, and this was the book that came with it. It's called Illuminating the Prophecy, and it's so wonderful because for anyone who's into doing, you know, tarot readings and things like that, she goes in and describes each card, but she does it in a very Magus Devater way. So it's just such a wonderful way to learn tarot, just because Magus Devater's writing, the way she describes things and the way she explains different archetypes and things like that, it's so informative, and yeah, I absolutely love it. Another magical book. My other 5 children. This is a newer series that I fell in love with and that changed my life. All these books changed my life pretty much, but this one in particular holds a special place in my heart. The Wayward Children series by Shawnee McGuire. The first book is Every Heart a Doorway. You guys could literally read the whole series in one day because each book is only like 150 pages, but It does not feel like 150 pages, it feels like a lifetime. Every Heart a Doorway. Down Among the Sticks and Bones. This one is my favorite. This one along with probably, this one and the fourth book are my favorite. But Beneath the Sugar Sky, this book is very sweet. Pun intended. In an Absent Dream, newest one, which has a coffee ring on it because I put a coffee cup on it. I'm sorry, I promise I take care of my books, but this one just, I couldn't find a coaster, okay? We have Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I have a different edition for the first book and the second and the third, just because I bought different editions of them. Siege and Storm. I have a Ruin and Rising, probably my favorite new cover design. Then I have the iconic duo over here, the gorgeous Six of Crows. Another book where I would just like die for all the characters. Well, maybe almost all of them. Some of them are not so nice. Second book in that duology, which is Crooked Kingdom, and these two are a spin-off of the Shadow and Bone series, and it's gonna be adapted to Netflix. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay guys, the last section of this top shelf is dedicated to one person and one person only. All of my Sarah J. Maas books. I have the entire Throne of Glass series. We'll start with the novella bind-up, which is The Assassin's Blade. You have to read this, okay? If you're gonna start the Throne of Glass series, I know the novellas are kind of seen as optional, but just do yourself a favor and read it because this is just a book in itself and it's amazing. I have Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, which is my favorite book in the whole series. I don't care what anybody else says, it's the best. It's the number one. Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Kingdom of Ash. My child. I swear some of the font or like some of the text in this book is messed up just because I was crying so hard while reading this one. It's the last book in the series. Tower of Dawn. And I have my favorite Sarah J. Maas series of all time, Court of Thorns and Roses. Okay, out of my favorite series, this is my favorite Sarah J. Maas book of all times. Out of every book on this shelf, A Court of Mist and Fury. You already know. If you've been following me, you know. Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the last book for now. We're getting 3 more books. And then this little, I want to call it a novella because it was like is it a novella? I don't think it's a 4th book. I think it's just a novella, but yes, it is A Court of Frost and Starlight. You guys, the next book I have here is Sarah J. Maas's newest book. I read it, I died, was resurrected, just like, it gave me life and death. I'm so sorry I did not do a reading vlog. I read this over the span of a month. This was like my March book, and it was amazing. This is probably, like, I cannot wait. I have so much to say about this book, so we're going to talk about it in another video. House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series, and you guys, I hope she makes this series like 10 books long because I would follow these characters to the ends of the earth. Okay, so I actually have 2 books down here that are not Sarah J. Maas books. I have Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell as well as Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and I do have the second book in the Carry On series, Wayward Son, but I haven't finished reading it yet. Okay, now onto my second row. You guys, we are getting into the real teen YA fiction. I feel like this is so, what is this, like 2010? First book I have here is Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. This is a standalone book, and it is about a girl who relives the same day that she dies over and over again, and she kind of has to figure out how to prevent it. This was actually turned into a movie. I can't remember if the movie was like the book at all, but yeah, I really enjoyed the standalone. Next up, I have Delirium by Lauren Oliver. I cried so hard reading these books, especially Requiem, because Lauren Oliver kind of has a way of leaving the ends of her book series that she writes open-ended, which is great, but also leaves a lot to the imagination, so of course I just imagine like the worst case scenario. This was one of the first books I read with a real cliffhanger. I remember finishing this book and thinking I cannot wait for the second book because if you guys remember the ending of this one. Next up, I have Pandemonium. Then last but not least, Requiem, which I think I originally listened to the audiobook for this one just because I couldn't physically bring myself to read them. Angsty teen phase. The next book series I have here is Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. It is about fallen angels, and it is the most tropey, wonderfully tropey book series I have ever read. I still go back to this book if I need a good laugh because it was everything. Can you just tell from like The cover. Yeah, okay, listen, if you haven't read Hush Hush, it's not too late, okay? Go back and read it right now. Crescendo, Silence, and last but not least, we have the finale. The Lunar Chronicles series, the first book here is Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, my favorite book in the series, which just so happens to be the last book, and that is Winter. And I think I kind of have like matching nails today. Then next I have the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. Oh my god, I can't believe the movie came out in 2014, you guys. That seems like, it just seems like it came out yesterday. Insurgent, Allegiant, have the Ember in the Ashes series, The Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Second book, A Torch Against the Night. Oh my god, okay, we are getting into some heavy teen sci-fi here. I have Jennifer L. Armentrout's Lux series. So this is a bind-up of Obsidian and Onyx, which is the first two books in the series. Consequences, which is Opal and Origin, I think. Last but not least, I have Opposition, which is, I think this is just the last book. I don't think this is a bind-up or anything. Next, I have the Pledge series by Kimberly Durding, which is completely out of order. This one should be first. The Pledge, The Essence, and lastly, The Offering. This is the best zombie series I have ever read. I don't even want to call it a zombie series because it's so much bigger than the fact that there's like The Walking Dead. The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan. I originally got the first book for like $2 at a Scholastic book sale and did not expect it to be so amazing, so immediately I bought the second and the third book after. But yes, this is the first book, the original cover. The Dead Tossed Waves. Last book, which is The Dark and Hollow Places. Ugh, this series brings back so many memories. Next up, I have the Fifth Wave series by Rick Yancey, another one of my favorite sci-fi series. I actually got to meet Rick Yancey and his wife. I did like a moderating event, oh gosh, back in Indiana, so like several years ago, I think like 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, I actually got to meet Rick Yancey, so he signed it, and this is another copy that I hold dearly to my heart. Infinite Sea, the best book in the entire trilogy. The Last Star. Next up, I have the Darkest Mind series by Alexandra Bracken, another, would this be considered sci-fi? I think it is. But I have The Darkest Minds, Never Fade, In the Afterlight. The next section I have here is my Victoria Schwab section. We're kind of getting into new adult now as we go down. The very end will be adult. The first book I have here is Vicious by Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab she goes by for her adult book. I feel like I'm gonna have to reread it again because it's 2020 and I need to like read it at least once a year. And I have the second book in that series, which is Vengeful. I have the Darker Shade of Magic series. The first one is A Darker Shade of Magic. A Gathering of Shadows. Last book here, which I have not finished, I lied. There are a few book series that I'm like halfway between right now, but the last one here is A Conjuring of Light, which I haven't brought myself to finish this series yet. I kind of do this thing where I put off the last book when I really enjoy a series, so I have been putting off A Conjuring of Light, but I will finish it. I have this Savage Song, which this one technically is a teen book or like YA book, but another amazing book. I also read the second one, which is Our Dark Duet. I just don't have a physical copy of it yet. I have her middle grade book. Okay, I totally lied. I have a few non-new adult books here, but this is City of Ghosts, and the second book in the series just came out as well, which I need to get my hands on. And then I have my favorite book of 2019, Serpent and Dove by Shelby Maharin. This book, it just absolutely made my year, and the second book, Blood and Honey, I believe it's called, comes out soon, so I can't wait to continue this series. Okay, so next up I have Nevernight by J. Kristoff, and I have God's Grave, and I do have the third book, Dark Dawn, which I have not finished, so it's on my bookstore shelf for now until I finish it. Then it'll earn its spot here on the main shelf. Next up I have Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I have the collector's edition of Red Queen. I'm gonna give this book a second try. The reason why I put it on the shelf is because the first time I read it, I think I gave it like 5 out of 10 stars, but I think partially kind of the mood I was in when I was reading it, I wasn't in the mood for it, so I want to give it a second try, so that's why I kept the book here. Okay, the next book I have here is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I have her other book as well, but I think I put it, where did I put her book? I should probably have put it up here, but I have The Darkest Part of the Forest, which is another one of her books that I really enjoyed. Then I have The Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. The next book book I have here is You by Caroline Kepnes, an amazing, amazing psychological thriller. Highly recommend. Also recommend the Netflix show. It's one of those adaptations that they actually like they nailed it. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, another amazing thriller book. Another adult thriller is Nine Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty. This one's a slower paced thriller, but I really enjoyed it and I want to read more of Leanne's books. Another amazing adult thriller, Her Every Fear by Peter Swanson. This was probably one of the best thrillers I read last year. And here is Room by Emma Donoghue. This one, I would put like a trigger warning for this one. It's a very intense book, but I recommend you read the book before you watch the movie, because there is a movie adaptation as well, and it has the same actress that plays Captain Marvel, I believe. Another thriller series is Project Kane by Jeffrey Girard. Now there's Project Kane and Kane's Blood, and they're both the same story but told from different perspectives. It's about these scientists who take the DNA of famous serial killers and create children from this DNA just to see what would happen, and it is wild. Like, ooh, okay, another amazing book, History of Wolves by Emily Fridlin, one of my favorite adult novels. And I have Chain Letter by Christopher Pike. This was an older thriller novel. It came out in the 80s, I think, and this one's a bind-up of the first two books. Ooh, I have the next book here, which is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Tor. I need to finish this series. This is very much an adult thriller, but it's insane, like, amazing. Next book I have here is a historical fiction novel, and it is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I read this book last year. I think I talked about it for a good 20 minutes in my wrap-up video because I cried so hard reading this book. It almost felt like this intense, like, coming-of-age thriller story. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Did I say Reeds? Taylor Jenkins Reid. The next book I have here is, I don't know, I think this is technically a young adult book, but I'm gonna put it with adult just because the themes of this book, I would say, fall under adult, but this is Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson. It is the best Peter Pan retelling I've ever read. It will make you cry. It is from the perspective of Tiger Lily, who is the Native American girl. Bring your tissues for this one because it'll change your life. Next book I have here is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, and Malcolm Gladwell was the author I got to interview for the BookTube show, so this book has a special place in my heart. I have After Dark by Haruki Murakami. I do have one Q84 as well as one other Haruki book, but those are unread. I haven't read those yet, so they're on my other shelf. Another series that I need to finish because I only read the first book, but I absolutely loved it. It is The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakovic. Next up, I have Girl Boss by Sophia Amoruso. This one's a non-fiction book and it is fantastic. The next book I have here is The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C., another amazing historical fiction novel. Here are my Madeline Miller books. So I have Circe as well as The Song of Achilles. Fantastic. I did reading vlogs, I think, for both of them, but yeah, these ones are ones that I really want to go back and listen to the audiobook just because I just fell in love with the stories. The last few books here are all poetry books, so I will just quickly go through them. Taming the Lion by Aisha Ghulam, and she is a self-published poetry writer, and this is her very first debut poetry collection. I have all of Amanda Lovelace's poetry collection, so I have The Princess Saves Herself in this one, The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, The Mermaid's Voice Returns in this one, Drink Coffee with a Ghost, To Make Monsters Out of Girls, her newest poetry collection, which is Break Your Glass Slippers, and then she has a poetry collection with Nikita Gill and Trista Mateer, so it has poetry from her as well as these two poets, and it's called Dragonheart. Now onto the third shelf. The first series I have here is the Cassandra Clare City of Bones series, so we're just gonna go through each of these because I feel like Cassandra Clare is pretty well known. City of Bones, City of Ash, City of Glass, City of Fallen Angels, City of Lost Souls. Oh, also, just to show you how much I love this series, I do have a rune tattoo. It's the Parabatai tattoo. City of Heavenly Fire. Then I have the Dark Artifices series, which the first one is Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, Queen of Air and Darkness. Then I have the newest series that I just read. I'm currently on the last book, which is why there's a little bookmark, but already I can tell it's going to be worthy of this shelf because You guys, this is one of the most amazing series that I have ever read. The Golden Compass series by Philip Pullman. I had to order these books off of eBay because I could not find, like, I don't even know if they're still printing it because it originally came out in 1998, I think. The first book here is The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife. Last book, which I am so sad to be finishing, is The Amber Spyglass, and I am really taking my time with this one because I don't want it to be over. And I have Maggie Stiefvater's not her first series, but her series that she wrote before the Raven Cycle. I think it's called the Wolves of Mercy series. I only read the first 2 books, and this is another series where I want to give it another try because at the time I think I gave it 5 out of 10 stars as well, but I wasn't in the mood to read this genre, so I'm like definitely a mood reader, so if I'm not in the mood to read a genre, I will tend to like rank books a little lower. So I want to give it another chance because I love Maggie, but yes, I have Shiver, Linger, and Forever. Next, I have another middle grade book by the lovely India Hill Brown. It's her very first book, and it is The Forgotten Girl. Then I have Furthermore by Tahiti Mafi, as well as Witchwood by Tahiti Mafi. This book kind of has that Alice in Wonderland feel, which I love. Then next up, I have The Nightmare Affair by Mindy Arnett, Lumine by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I do have Gemini series that I need to finish because I absolutely love the first book. I think I'm going to go back and listen to the audiobook for the first one. One of my new favorite YA sci-fis, Aurora Rising, also by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I have Burned by Ellen Hopkins, Frank by Ellen Hopkins, The Diviners by Libba Bray, Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray, have Shipbreaker and the Drowned Cities by Paolo Bacigalupi. This is an entirely underrated series, and I also have the last book. I had no idea he continued the series, I just thought it was a duology, but the last book is called Tool of War, which I do have, and I'm super excited to read. Then I have the Kiss of Deception series by Mary E. Pearson, which the first book is The Kiss of Deception, The Heart of Betrayal, and then the very last book, which is The Beauty of Darkness, and this one is just huge. Next, I have There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins, and this was the very first book I read where the main character is both Polynesian and Black, so that was really exciting for me to like read about a book and to be able to like see myself fully. Oh my gosh, we have The Book of Tragedy. Next, we have We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I'm currently reading her second book right now, which is Burn Their Bodies Down, and it is amazing and will be next to this book as soon as I finish reading it. Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. You guys, this book was so fun. Not a Drop to Drink by Mindy McGinnis, Every Day by David Levithan, Immortal City by Scott Speer, an entirely underrated book. This one is amazing. It's about guardian angels, but they're like Hollywood celebrities, and you have to like pay to have a guardian angel. It's fantastic. Highly recommend. The author is actually a screenwriter or a director or something, so you kind of get that movie feel while you're reading it. Night World by L.J. Smith, a super cheesy vampire book, but definitely one that'll pick you up. Four-Cross by Marie Lu, Maze Runner by James Dashner. I have finished this whole series. I absolutely loved it. I just don't know where my other 2 books in this series went, but I have read them and I absolutely loved them. Eve and Adam by Michael Grant, Defy and Ignite by Sarah B. Larson. Next, I have Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton, Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, Mind Games by Kirsten White, The End Games by T. Michael Martin. This was fantastic, and I don't know if this is a series. If so, I will continue it. A Mad Wicked Folly by Sharon Biggs Waller, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, Wait for You by Jennifer L. Armentrout, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This one is one of my favorite contemporary books. It is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, Again But Better by Christine Riccio, All the Bright Places by Jennifer Neven, Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, a book that oh my god, I enjoyed this one so much. It might be one of my favorite John Green books of all time, and I absolutely loved The Fault in Our Stars, which I also have here. Then I have Paper Towns. Okay, I also have Looking for Alaska by John Green. For anyone who's been watching my channel for a while, you know that I did not actually enjoy Looking for Alaska, but the reason why I have it on this shelf is because it is another book that I want to give a second try. I read it when I was 14 or 15, I think, so I would like to read it again just to see if my perspective has changed. Then I have another Tahira Mafi book, A Very Large Expanse of Sea. 2 Nicola Youn books here. I have Everything, Everything, and The Sun is Also a Star. I just got to meet and interview Nicola Youn, and she is the most lovely person. It's so nice when you meet an author that you really admire and they're just as amazing and lovely in person. So yeah, Nicola Youn, she is just the most wonderful person. Then I have my Angie Thomas books. I have The Hate You Give and On the Come Up. Another one of my favorite YA contemporaries, Jackpot by Nick Stone. Awesome YA contemporary book, Top 10 by Katie Cotugno. I just mailed my sister like 4 of my Katie Cotugno books because she asked for a really fun contemporary book to read. So I always recommend Katie Cotugno because her books are just really light and yeah, just lots of fun. It's kind of like my YA contemporary section. But the next book I have here is another YA contemporary. It is Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which I absolutely love the book, and the movie was fantastic. It had kind of that like indie short film feel to it. Then I have The Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds, Frankly in Love by David Youn. And then the last 3 contemporary books I have is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I did a lot of events with Francesca Zappia years ago. Eliza and Her Monsters is amazing. I would also recommend Made You Up, which is her other book, which I don't know where my copy went. I'm so bummed. But yeah, I'm gonna have to get another copy, but Francesca Zappia is a fantastic author. The Guys by Lisa Alden, a really fun sort of coming of age YA book. And then last but not least, I have The Lovely Reckless by Cami Garcia. So let's get started on this bottom shelf. Like I said before, these are mainly collector's editions, specials editions of books, with the exception of these 2 Cassandra Clare books that I couldn't fit on the shelf above. So I have Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess. Unfortunately, I have 2 different editions of this book, which is why they look kind of funny together and the spines don't match. But yes, I have read the entire Infernal Devices series, but I only have those 2 for now, but I will be getting the 3rd book soon. Then I have the oldest book on my shelf. This used to be my dad's book, and it is the Golden Treasury of Children's Literature. This is a bunch of illustrated children's stories, so it's really cool. I have my Grimm's Complete Fairy Tale collection, and I have the illustrated edition of Pan's Labyrinth. Okay, so I lied again. I do have one series on this shelf that I haven't read. This is the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. Now, I have watched the movie, I know! My stepsister actually found this collector's edition of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. She found this for like $10 at a Goodwill, and I looked online and it's actually valued a lot higher, so I'm kind of scared to take it out of the packaging. The next box set I have here is the Beyonder series by Brandon Mull. It is one of the most underrated, I think it falls under YA fiction, but honestly it reads like young adult. But the first book in the series is A World Without Heroes. The second book is Seeds of Rebellion. The third book here is Chasing the Prophecy. Now, this is another series that I really want to reread because I read it, I think when I was like 13 or 14. Then next I have Fable Haven by Brandon Mull. This is one of my favorite Brandon Mull series. I unfortunately only have 1 book, but the full series is I think 5 or 6 books, and I read the first 3. Next up I have my collector's edition of the Percy Jackson series. Yes, so I just keep these guys down here. I also have the new cover edition of the Kane Chronicles series, and these covers are gorgeous, you guys. So this is the Red Pyramid, and then the Throne of Fire. It kind of has like a comic book feel, I think. And then the third book here is The Serpent's Shadow. Then, if I didn't have enough Percy Jackson books, I have the illustrated edition of The Lightning Thief, which is the first book, and it is so gorgeous, you guys. Like, the artwork is just... oh, I love it. I have 2 more Percy Jackson books. I feel like I should just title this like the Percy Jackson bookshelf tour. But yeah, this is Greek Gods and Greek Heroes, so it kind of goes through the Greek gods and heroes that are talked about in the main series. Next book I have here is Arusha and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi. So then I have the graphic novel edition of The Red Pyramid, The Lost Hero, as well as The Son of Neptune. Yeah, I'm a big Percy Jackson fan, you guys. So then I have a bunch of these little they're called like confidential guidebooks that come with the Percy Jackson series. You guys, I'm such a dork for Percy Jackson, okay? Just bear with me here, okay? I have the Camp Half-Blood Confidentials, the Olympians Demigod Files, Demigods and Magicians, Percy and Annabeth Meet the Kane, so it's kind of a crossover. The Kane Chronicles Brooklyn House Magician's Manual, the Kane Chronicles Survival Guide. So these are all the little kind of companion books that go with the main series. You do not need to read them unless you're a diehard fan like me. thingy in which you get all the stuff. This book here is actually the very first book I received when I started YouTube for review, and this is The Gemstone by Serena and Sasha Nunui. Now we're kind of getting into my classic books, so I have a couple different editions of Alice in Wonderland because it's one of my favorite classic stories. So I have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. This is the... what edition is this? This one here is the Barnes & Noble's Classic Edition. And then I have my favorite version, or my favorite edition. This is the Barnes & Noble's Collector's Edition. Then I have the abridged version by Paper Mills Press, and this is their Collector's Edition, and I absolutely love this one as well. Then I have The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I think I read this book probably 5 or 6 times in school because they kept assigning it to us for like required reading, but I really enjoyed it. To Alice in Wonderland, my second favorite classic is Frankenstein. I absolutely love this edition. This is the Paper Mills edition as well. I have The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Okay, I have not one, but 2 copies of The Great Gatsby. I recently discovered that I am in love with Oscar Wilde, so The Picture of Dorian Gray is another one of my favorite classics. I plan on reading other books by Oscar Wilde. So far I've only read this one, so if you guys let me know what your recommendations are. Oscar Wilde has written so much, so let me know what your favorite Oscar Wilde book is because I want to read more. I loved Dorian Gray. Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, The Giver by Louise Laurie, The Crucible by Arthur Miller, Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis, another abridged version of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, another mass paperback edition of Frankenstein, 1984 by George Orwell, We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a super old book that came out in 1920. I believe this is the copyright for this one, but it's a diet and health book. I do not recommend you follow any of the advice given in this book, but this is just a really cool old book that I have. Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli, Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You guys, I only have the first book in this series, even though I read the full series, and the movies always make me cry, but I plan on getting the full, all the books in this series. I read this book in the 4th grade. It was an assigned reading, and it was wild, okay? This is The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. Yeah, this is a classic book, and oh my god, I wrote a 4-page report on this book back in the 4th grade. It was fantastic. Okay, next up I have a bunch of Judy Blume books. So I have Tiger Eyes, It's Not the End of the World, and Maybe I Won't, and Super Fudge, which was my favorite Judy Blume book growing up. Next I have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, A Wrinkle in Time. All of these are graphic novels. So I have Saga, which is one that I really want to continue. I read the first book, or the first graphic novel, and it was insane. I did not expect the wildness that happened in this book, but yeah, Saga was fantastic. I also have this little parody of the Hunger Games, and it's called The Hunger Pains, and it is literally the funniest graphic novel I have ever read. I don't even know where I found this thing, but it's really funny. It makes fun of the Hunger Games. I love the Hunger Games, but yeah, I saw this and I just had to pick it up. It was like $2 or $3. I have Piper by Jay Asher and Jessica Freeberg, Spill Zone by Scott Westerfield. This is probably my favorite graphic novel of all times. Okay, then I have all of these DC comic graphic novels. So I have Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo, Shadow of the Batgirl by Sarah Kuhn and Nicole Gout, Twin by Mariko Tamaki, Nightwalker by Marie Lu, my absolute favorite, which is Raven by Cami Garcia. Next I have A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, Ally Cross by James Patterson. This was another book that I got to do a episode of BookTube with. Spellcaster by Claudia Gray, Spit in the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim, Love and Other Unknown Variables by Shannon Lee Alexander. She was one of the first authors I ever met in person. Flame in the Mist by Renee Adier, Creed by Trisha Lever and Lindsay Curry, Contaminated by M. Garner, Through the Zombie Glass by Jenna Showalter, The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer. Now this is another book that I gave a 5 or 6 out of 10 rating for that I want to go back and reread and hopefully finish the series and enjoy it. Then I have another edition of Frankly in Love, and Penguin Teen actually kindly sent me a bound, is it a bound manuscript or like an ARC version of this, and it has my name on it, so it says Frankly in Love with Naya, and yeah, I love this, so I just keep it here for safekeeping. Oh my god, Okay, so here's that other Holly Black book. I'm gonna put this actually up with Cruel Prince, but this is The Darkest Part of the Forest, and it was the very first Holly Black book I read. Okay, next up I have the first 2 books in the Dune series by Carrie Corb and Lori Langdon. A Girl Who Can Move SHIT with Her Mind by Jackson Ford. This book was hilarious, and it's just a very realistic version of like what it would be like to have telekinetic powers. Then I have my Maya Angelou poetry collection, which is very loved. I often go back and read this quite a bit. Greek philosophy book. I should actually put this on my other shelf with my other nonfiction books, but yes, it is down here for now. Last but not least, I'm not gonna pull them out because they keep falling, but I have the first 3 books in the Outlander series. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, keep reading and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!